The 18-year-old sat across from the investigator, hands flat on the table, back straight, voice without a single tremor. The interrogation room camera recorded his every movement, and there were almost no movements at all. When asked, "Did you do this?" he answered without a pause, without the slightest hesitation, "Yes." The investigator clarified, "With a sharp object?" "Yes." "Multiple strikes?" "Yes." She was 13. "Yes." And to every question, a single word, no remorse, no bravado, in the even tone of someone recounting something distant, something that happened long ago and has nothing to do with anything. The report was filled out quickly. The suspect did not dispute a single point, did not request an attorney, did not ask for a break, did not cry. He was fully oriented in time and space. The confession was obtained within the first hours, and that is an important detail, because usually at this stage a case picks up speed. There is a confession, there is a weapon, there is a location. Everything needed to move forward without delay. But this interrogation was dead stuck on one question that the investigator asked 3 times, each time in a new phrasing, with a different intonation, through pauses. The answer did not change. The question was simple: why? The person who had just calmly confirmed every fact, every detail, every action he had taken, stopped and could not find an answer. This is the very center of the entire story. He did not say, "I don't remember." He did not say, "She brought it on herself." He did not try to shift the blame onto someone else. Not onto circumstances, not onto alcohol, not onto chance. The 18-year-old looked at the investigator and said evenly, "I don't know why I did it." It is important to understand that this was not a ploy, not an attempt to buy time or derail the investigation. He answered everything clearly and in order, where exactly he was standing, what he was holding, how many times he struck and where. But when the conversation reached the why, he stopped, not like a person hiding something, afraid of giving himself away with a single extra word. Something was simply absent inside him. The investigation officially noted, "Motive not established, per the suspect's own statements." And that is a rarity. In the majority of similar cases, the motive is obvious within the first few minutes. Here, nothing. A void where the reason should be. And this void is not a footnote in the margins, not a passing technical complication for investigators. It is the central question of the entire case. Because when a person does what he did and cannot himself explain why, that is far more frightening than any comprehensible motive. This entire video is an attempt to find an answer that the investigator himself could not obtain. But to search, we first need to understand who Sonia was and what happened in the settlement of Kez. Kez is an urban-type settlement in the north of Udmurtia, population just over 10,000. One main street, a few schools, a railway station that serves as the employer for the entire district. All of it a typical portrait of such places. Here, everyone knows each other, not just by name, but by family. Whose son, whose daughter, who is friends with whom, who lives where, and what goes on behind the neighbor's door. And news here travels faster than the internet, over fences, through stairwells, through the checkout lines at the local grocery store, the night of March 14th to 15th, 2026, a Friday, March cold, the streets empty. Most likely, the lights in most windows had already gone out. A working settlement goes to bed by the alarm clock without unnecessary late-night walks. But in one home, the lights stayed on. A mother was waiting. Sonia had not come home by nightfall. Her phone was silent. In a big city, a routine anxiety of the teenage years, almost a normal weekend occurrence. For Kez, a signal of a different kind. There is nowhere to disappear here. No nightclubs, no 24-hour establishments, no strangers to vanish with. If someone is not home after midnight, it means something has happened. And the mother understood this immediately. Most likely she first called friends, relatives, neighbors, everyone she knew, and then dialed the number that in settlements like these, people dial last. The police. Those who knew Sonia described her the same way. Positive, open, and with a strong will. Not quiet, not withdrawn. The kind of person who walks up first to introduce herself. In school, she had a clear reputation. She could stand up for herself. Not a bully, not a troublemaker, just a person who could not be intimidated, who would not stay silent where someone else would have stayed silent and stepped aside. Brave. That was the word repeated by everyone who spoke about her. She had many friends, not a circle of 2 or 3, but a wide network. People knew her, people loved her, people wanted to spend time with her. Family, a mother, an older sister, a brother, and an uncle, Artem Lekomtsev, who would later tell investigators his version of what happened. That version will prove important for understanding the full picture. The family was ordinary, small town, solid. Sonia was not a difficult teenager. She did not run away from home, did not get into trouble. Everything known about her paints a portrait of a normal, healthy, happy life. In settlements like these, 13 is an age when the world seems clear and safe, especially in a place where everyone knows each other. But there was something that only the closest people knew. One circumstance the family kept in mind and did not speak of openly around outsiders, and it would play an important role. From birth, Sonia had lived with a congenital heart defect, a diagnosis so serious that she had been given artificial heart valves, surgeries, constant medical observation, limitations that most peers have no concept of. But those who saw her every day, who were around her, all said the same thing. You could not tell by looking at her. She did not feel sorry for herself, did not hide behind her diagnosis, did not sit at home on a quiet regimen. She lived as if there were no defect at all, a full life, at full volume. She ran, she made friends, she laughed, she kept up with her peers. She wanted to become a veterinarian or a doctor. She had not decided for certain yet on the exact direction, but the calling she felt clearly. She loved animals, not abstractly, but concretely. At home, they had a cat, another cat, a rabbit, a guinea pig, hamsters, an entire zoo in a small-town apartment. Most likely, it was her own experience with doctors that pushed her toward that dream. She knew from the inside what it feels like when your life depends on someone else's hands and someone else's decisions, what it means to wait for help. And it should be noted, the heart that, by every medical prognosis, could have failed at any moment, held. Sonia survived the surgeries, survived everything that statistically could have stopped her. She defied the doctor's predictions and kept living, as if there were still plenty of time and plans ahead. But it was not her heart that stopped her. The mother called the police that same night. The duty officer accepted the report. A minor was missing. In a settlement of 10,000, such calls are rare, and they are treated differently here than in a metropolis, where such things are routine for the night shift. The machine kicked into gear quickly. The investigative committee got involved. The Ministry of Internal Affairs got involved. Search parties were formed without delay. Most likely, the first hours followed the standard procedure: interviewing the inner circle, checking the last calls and messages on her phone, canvassing around the last known location. In a small settlement, searching is easier than it seems from the outside. There are fewer cameras here, but far more eyes. Someone saw something, someone heard something. Someone knows exactly where she went that evening and who she spoke with. Detectives worked through the entire night, and they found her quickly. The count was in hours, not days. This is an important detail that cannot be overlooked. In most similar cases, searches stretch on for days, weeks, months. People wait, hope, hold on to hope as long as they can. Here, that did not happen. What they were looking for was discovered within the settlement, not on the outskirts, not in an abandoned building, not in a tree line beyond the railroad tracks. And the place where Sonia was found immediately changed the entire picture because it pointed not only to the person responsible, it pointed to another participant, an ordinary apartment building, standard layout, thin walls through which, in the quiet of the night, you can hear everything happening next door. The apartment belonged to the 18-year-old. It was here, on the night of March 14th, that the tragedy occurred. As the investigation would later establish, multiple strikes with a sharp object to the neck and torso. Not a single strike in a moment of sudden blind rage, but multiple and deliberate. And at the time of his actions, the 18-year-old was intoxicated. This is not an assumption. It is the result of a forensic examination. Intoxicated, with a weapon, in his own apartment, late at night. The question that arises first and rings the loudest: did Sonia come here on her own? Was she somehow brought here? Did she know where she was going and to whom? The answers to this question, investigators reconstructed minute by minute, interviewing everyone who might have seen or heard something. But one detail became known almost immediately and reshaped the entire picture. In the apartment on Pushkin Street that night, there were not two people. There were three, and the third person was not a random bystander who happened to be in the wrong place. Their role in what happened is something the investigation would examine separately. In that apartment was the 16-year-old girlfriend of the 18-year-old. Not in the next room, not behind a closed door, not in the hallway. Right there, in the same room. And she saw what was happening. She saw the weapon, saw Sonia, saw every action from beginning to end, and did nothing. She did not scream, did not try to intervene, did not run out of the apartment, did not use a phone, did not call the neighbors. 16 years old, an age when a person absolutely understands the difference between a fight and what was happening in that room that night. She understood everything, and she stayed. The investigation would officially note, was present, did not intervene. Those two phrases, juridically dry, humanly unbearable. Because quote 10 means she heard every sound in that apartment, in that silence. And quote 11 means she made a decision, whether consciously or out of fear. That is for the investigation to determine in the course of further work, but the fact itself remains unchanged. She was next to Sonia at the moment when Sonia could still have been saved, and she did not make a single move in that direction, and it is important not to rush to judgment here, because between quote 12 and quote 13, there is an enormous difference, and it is precisely this boundary that the investigation must establish. However, the hardest part of this story is not what she saw, but what she did afterward. Sonia and the 16-year-old had once been friends, not just acquaintances through the settlement, but actual friends. They spent time together, talked, ran in the same circle. A 3-year age gap in the teenage world feels sharp, but in a small settlement with a limited social circle, friendships form not by age but by shared interests and proximity of yards. Roughly half a year before that night, the friendship ended. No argument, no scandal, no dramatic falling out. They simply stopped. Sonia stepped away quietly without explanations from the outer circle. The reason became known later, from the accounts of relatives. Something about that girl became known. Something that the school and the neighborhood also knew. Enough to say plainly, without sugarcoating, stay away from her. This was not an abstract parental quote 14. It was a specific warning based on specific facts the family knew firsthand. Sonia listened. 6 months without calls, without meetings, without shared evenings, a clean break, a deliberate decision she maintained consistently, and for 6 months, she lived her own life. School, friends, animals, dreams about a future profession. And then came the night of March 14th, and Sonia ended up in an apartment where there were 2 people, the 18-year-old and the one she had been told not to associate with. What exactly happened between 6 months of silence and this meeting is one of the key points of the entire investigation. The 16-year-old had prior run-ins with the police. That was public knowledge, not a secret and not a rumor. The local beat officer knew, the neighbors knew, the parents of classmates knew. In Kes, you cannot hide something like that. That is precisely why Sonia's relatives warned her, not in the abstract, but knowing the specific history of that family and that specific friend. Run-ins with the police are not a criminal record, not a prison sentence, but it is a marker that in a small settlement gets read instantly. A person whose trajectory is not following the standard path, and everyone knows it. Sonia, having heard the warning, listened. And this is important to understand. She was not a rebel. She did not ignore her family. She made a decision and held it consistently. But on the night of March 14th, something changed. Someone called, or called through someone else. And Sonia, who for 6 months had consistently avoided any contact, went to the apartment of the 18-year-old. On her own, by her own will, without a compelling reason, she would not have gone. That contradicts everything. It means there was either a pretext or a deception. And the difference between those two options is fundamental, and that is exactly what the investigation is working to determine. After what happened in the apartment, the 16-year-old did not call an ambulance, did not dial the police, did not run to the neighbors. She did none of the things a person does in panic and shock. She stayed and began cleaning up. Together with the boyfriend, they wiped the floor, methodically, silently, most likely in complete silence, save for the sound of a wet rag. Then they wrapped Sonia in a duvet cover, bedding from the same closet, from the same apartment, an ordinary duvet cover that, by that same morning, could have been drying on the balcony as if nothing had happened. Then they moved her, did not leave her in the apartment, did not bring her outside where people could see. They moved her to a garage, but not a random garage, the garage belonging to the mother of the 16-year-old. This is the detail that changes everything. She did not merely help conceal evidence. She used her own family as a hiding place for what had happened. Her mother, most likely knowing nothing about what had occurred, unwittingly became part of the chain. The garage, the key to which the daughter had, became the final stop. She was 16. A year earlier, she had been spending time with Sonia in the same settlement, in the same group, on the same streets. Now she was wrapping and hiding what was left of her. That is what "did not intervene" truly means in this story. The name of the 18-year-old has not been made public. The investigation sealed that information. Little is known. He is a local from Kez, not an outsider, not a stranger. He grew up here, attended the same schools, walked the same streets, and people knew him the way everyone is known in a 10,000-person settlement. His official record carries the designation "prone to antisocial behavior." And it is important to understand that such a characterization does not come from a single incident and does not appear out of nowhere. It accumulates gradually, from school reports, from the beat officer's files, from neighbors' complaints, from minor incidents. And 18 is technically an adult, but in reality, a person who has barely left adolescence and already carries a characterization that would bar him from any job. Not a criminal record, but a characterization. That is the gap where many people get lost. Not yet a criminal on paper, but already a long way from an ordinary resident living an ordinary life. And the system saw him, documented him, checked the boxes, and did not stop him. Until March 14th, he was a line in the local officer's report. Unpleasant but familiar. One of many. From that moment on, he became the prime suspect in a criminal case that reached far beyond the borders of Kez. March 16th, 2 days after what happened, he was officially charged. The case was transferred to the Balazinski court, the nearest district court because Kez itself has no courthouse, and it is several dozen kilometers away along Udmurt roads. The hearing was quick. The court ordered pretrial detention until May 14th, 2026. 2 months in a detention facility until the next court date. There was no possibility of release before that ruling. The grounds for detention were standard, but one stands out separately. The investigation directly stated that the suspect could exert pressure on witnesses. Not theoretically, specifically. You have to understand the scale. In a settlement where everyone lives within a radius of a few streets, the witnesses are the neighbors. The acquaintances, former classmates, relatives separated by 2 handshakes. Pressure here does not require threats. A look in the grocery store is enough. A word through mutual friends. A simple presence on the right street at the right moment. The court took this into account and made the only possible decision. The facts lined up clearly. There was a confession, there was a weapon, there was a location. The machinery of justice was working quickly and without errors, as it does in such cases. But one element was still missing: the motive. The investigation continued searching for a reason, and the accused repeated the same thing at every interrogation. ___quote _16__, and the picture did not change. The 18-year-old did not retract his statements, did not change his version, did not try to soften what had already been said. Yes, he was intoxicated. Yes, he took a sharp object. Yes, he struck. No, he could not explain why. He did not deflect responsibility. Did not say __, quote _17__, not a single attempt to construct a justification. The investigators tried different approaches. Chronological, emotional, detail-oriented. They asked him to reconstruct the evening minute by minute. They asked what he drank, with whom, when Sonia arrived, what they talked about, whether there was a conflict, whether there was a trigger, whether there was tension. He answered everything except the main question. The moment when his hand reached for the weapon remained blank. Not a blackout, not a feigned amnesia. Investigators are well trained at distinguishing one from the other. Most likely, he himself does not understand what exactly flipped the switch inside him. One moment they are sitting, talking, and then what happened next? In the course of the investigation, alcohol lowers inhibitions but does not create intent from nothing. Something had to start the chain. A word, a gesture, a glance, a movement. And if he himself does not know what, then perhaps the answer lies with the one who was in the room with him. The simplest version, and the first one the investigation considered, is alcohol combined with a long-documented tendency toward antisocial behavior. He drank, lost control, grabbed the weapon. A flash of aggression, without premeditation, without intent, without a specific target. This explains a lot. The absence of any attempt to flee before police arrived. The willingness to confess in the very first hours. People who plan ahead generally do not confess immediately and without resistance. People overtaken by intoxicated rage often cannot believe what they have done themselves and do not understand how it was even possible. The version is workable, but it has one weak point that nothing can close. It does not explain why Sonia was in that apartment in the first place. If this was a spontaneous outburst, then it means Sonia came voluntarily, of her own free will, to a person whose girlfriend she had stopped associating with. She came at night to an 18-year-old whom the settlement did not know from his best side. That does not fit the overall picture. She was not impulsive and did not follow anyone's lead on random whims. For 6 months she kept her distance, consciously, without lapses, without any reason to regret her decision, and then suddenly came on her own, on a Friday night, to people with that kind of reputation. That means she was called. But who, how, and why? That is the question that leads to the next version. Artem Likomtsev, Sonia's uncle, told the investigation his version of what happened. According to him, the 16-year-old lured Sonia under false pretenses. She devised a reason, likely something along the lines of, quote, 18 or, quote, 19 for Sonia, who had maintained her distance for 6 months. That would have been the only reason to come. Reconciliation, a conversation, a final resolution to the story. Not a party, not a chance encounter, not the street, but a specific, personal invitation from a former friend asking to meet. Sonia was brave, not afraid of people, not afraid of conversations, not afraid of confrontation when she thought it was necessary. Most likely, she thought, nothing to worry about, I will go, we will talk, we will sort things out. It was precisely this bravery that, this time, became a vulnerability. A cautious person would have refused without a second thought. An anxious person would have called their mother and asked for advice. Sonia went, because she was not accustomed to being afraid. The uncle's version has not been officially confirmed by the investigation. It remains the account of a close relative. But there is logic in it, and it cannot simply be dismissed. 6 months of silence, and then a sudden meeting. Someone had to be the first to extend a hand and initiate contact. And if it was the friend, then a question arises that reshapes the entire configuration of the case. Did she know in advance how this would end? Or did she simply invite Sonia, and what happened was something she did not expect? The 16-year-old lives in Kez. She still walks those same streets, and the investigation is looking at her along one line: concealment of a crime. She was present during what happened in the apartment. She wiped away the evidence, helped wrap and carry. She provided her own mother's garage as a storage location. And for all of this, an investigation for concealment. It should be noted, the maximum sentence in this category is 2 years. 2 years for what she did that night, step by step, in sequence. Here, a disconnect arises that is felt by everyone examining this case. Her actions were not passive silence, not inaction born of fear and confusion. They were active participation in concealment, sequential, multi-staged, requiring concrete physical effort. And yet, the investigation is not, for now, considering her role to be broader than that. Either there are genuinely no grounds, or there is insufficient evidence for a more serious charge. The legal designation can change at any moment, and in practice, in cases like these, it does. But for now, she walks those same streets of Kez, past Sonia's home, past the school where everyone knew them both. The head of the Investigative Committee's Division for Udmurtia, Anatoly Tugushev, took the case under his personal oversight. This is not a routine decision. The head of the regional investigative apparatus is personally supervising the course of the investigation. Every report crosses his desk, every procedural decision falls under his direct scrutiny. But it did not stop there. Alexander Bastrikin, the head of the investigative committee for the entire country, demanded a briefing on this case, a settlement in the north of Udmurtia, and it is being reported to the top official of the Federal Investigative Agency. That is a scale that speaks volumes. Either the case is more complex than it appears on the surface, or the public outcry has reached a level impossible to ignore and pretend everything is proceeding as usual. Or both at once. When Bastrikin demands a briefing, it is a signal to the entire chain of command. There must be no mistakes. Every forensic examination under oversight, every interrogation by the book, every procedural decision with documented justification. Pressure from above does not guarantee justice. That is important to understand. Kez did not sleep. The news spread within the first 24 hours, not through official media, not through telegram channels, but through people. Word of mouth in a 10,000-person settlement works instantly and without fail. By the morning of March 15th, everyone knew what had happened and to whom, and exactly where the garage was, where everything had been taken. Under Sonia's memorial posts on social media, hundreds of comments, not from strangers on the internet, but from people who knew her personally, classmates, neighbors, parents, friends, teachers who had seen her every week. And every other comment, I knew her, she was friends with my daughter, we lived on the same street. But they knew not only Sonia, they knew the 18-year-old too, his family, his history, his reputation in the settlement. They knew the 16-year-old, her run-ins with the police, and her crowd. And they knew her mother, whose garage became the final stop on the route. In a big city, a crime like this exists behind glass. The victims, the suspects, the witnesses exist as names in a report, as strangers' fates on a news screen. Here, every face is familiar. Sonia, the girl from next door, the one who did this, the guy from the building across the street, the one who helped conceal it, a former friend. Throughout this video, we searched for the answer to the question, why? It was never given. Not once. Not in interrogations, not in court, not in official documents. It is time to face the truth. We know everything except the main thing. We know who, the 18-year-old from Kez with a documented tendency toward antisocial behavior. We know where, the apartment. We know how, multiple strikes, and a former friend methodically, step by step, cleaning up the evidence. We know when, March 14th. We do not know why. And the intoxicated outburst theory does not explain how Sonia ended up in that apartment in the first place. The luring theory has not been confirmed by the investigation. He himself says, I don't know. And perhaps that is the truth. Perhaps that is the most honest answer he is capable of giving. Perhaps no motive exists. Not in the sense that it is hidden or has yet to be uncovered by investigators, but in the sense that there simply was none to begin with. No reason, no plan, no purpose, just an intoxicated night, a weapon in the kitchen, and a person for whom a single impulse was enough. That is more terrifying than any motive, because a motive can be defended against, can be anticipated, can be avoided, but randomness cannot. What haunts the people of Kez is not the act itself, but the fact that no one knows why. Sofia Likomtseva, September 19, 2012 to March 14, 2026. She dreamed of healing animals, knew how to stand up for herself, was not afraid, and she was 13 years old. What do you think about this video? Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to our channel, and hit that like button. See you next time.